Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me? Apparently we cannot stop the sound, so we'll have to shout. Thank you all for joining, really appreciate it. I know it's the last session of the day, so it's never easy. But it's great to be here. First time that Airbnb is actually on stage at ATM. My name is Hadi Musa, and I manage Airbnb in Middle East and Africa. Today we'll talk about the story of Airbnb, where we started, where we are today, and also where we are in this region and our plans going forward. And then we'll leave some time at the end for any questions that you have. Perfect. So this is where Airbnb actually started. This is the apartment where two of the founders lived. They were two designers trying to be entrepreneurs, finding it really difficult to pay their rent. So they decided to inflate 3 air mattresses and host a number of people who were coming to San Francisco to attend the conference. So this was a time when hotels were very expensive, they were full, so they found this alternative solution and found a way also for themselves to make money and to stay in their apartment. And this resulted in the creation of air bed and breakfast. So they inflated air mattresses, they provided breakfast the next day, so they called it air bed and breakfast. This was the website in 2008. It has 16 listings, some of them with very interesting names, like Tiki-tastic, for example. But this quickly evolved into the version that many of you might have seen today. So as you can see, the design itself has come a long way. This is just to stress the point, Airbnb is a design-driven company. It was founded, 2 of the 3 founders are actually designers. So there is a very strong focus on design. That includes the look and feel of the product, but also the customer journey, be it our guest or our host. We've also come a long way when it comes to the number of listings. So from 16 in 2008, today we have 4.5 million homes on the platform. And this is a truly global platform. It's in 191 countries, in 81,000 cities. And the types of homes you find on the platform are really interesting. They range from one private room, a shared room, an entire apartment, or it could include things like tree houses. Tree houses are actually very, very popular on Airbnb. Igloos, caravans, trains, castles, you name it. In addition to the more traditional, chalets, villas, etc. Now, people always ask, so why does it actually work? And there are a number of reasons why home sharing took off the way it did. Some of the reasons, the millennials were a key part of this. They started valuing experience and value. And that's what they were really looking for. They wanted a much more authentic experience. And so they were some of the major drivers behind it. They actually also wanted a more sustainable way of traveling. And Airbnb is truly a very, very sustainable way of travel. But the reason that Airbnb specifically worked are some of the trust and safety measures that were built into the platform from the very early days. And these are included across your booking journey. So from the time you are searching, to the booking, to also the time you are taking the trip. So what are these trust and safety measures? At the search stage, we're really trying to link your offline identity to your online identity. We want to create that element of trust, that we know who's booking, and we also know who's hosting. The review system is really, really critical for us. It's quite different from many of the other platforms. In this case, you can only review a property if you've actually stayed in that property. You cannot just go ahead and review any property that you want, which is very, very different from other platforms. And it's also a 2-way review system. So as a guest, I can review the property and the host, but the host is also reviewing me as a guest. So that gives an element of trust for the next host, maybe someone who's never hosted before, to have the comfort of hosting me in their home. And the way that it works is we only upload the 2 reviews at the same time. So there is no room for, say, tit or tat. I give you a bad review, you give me a bad review. And that really helps create the trust on the platform itself. Then during the booking process, there is this element of communication between guest and host if you want. If you have any specific questions, you want to make sure that this is the right property for you, you can communicate with the host and get that additional information. The payment part is also really critical. So the obvious part is having a secure payment platform, but the more important part is the timing of the payment and the way that works. The way that payment on Airbnb works is you as a guest make the payment when you actually make the booking. But that money stays with Airbnb until 24 hours after check-in. And only 24 hours after check-in, once we make sure that there are no issues whatsoever with the property, with the host, etc., only at that point the money is transferred to the host, and that gives us time to address any issues if they arise. And then finally, we have something that's really important on Airbnb, which is the insurance element. So we have a host protection and host liability. And this is really to cover any damage to the property, but also to cover the liability for the host if anything happens to the guest while they're staying in their home. This very, very rarely happens, but having these in place actually really builds the trust of both guest and host. And underpinning all of that, we have a 300-strong trust and safety team whose sole job is actually to monitor the platform, make sure there is no fraud, there is no bad actors, as we call them on Airbnb. And this really has been critical for the growth of Airbnb. So between the growth of homes, between all of these trust and safety measures, we have seen very strong growth in guest arrivals. It took a couple of years. It was a little bit difficult at the beginning, but starting around 2011, you see around 1 million guest arrivals. This goes to 3 million in 2012, 6 million, 16 million, 40 million, 80 million, and over 140 million last year. So very, very strong growth in guest arrivals. What do we know about these guests? The first thing that we actually know is these guests really want to live like a local. They want to stay in very specific neighborhood. And that's one of the key features that has enabled Airbnb to grow. So when we actually ask our guests, 75% of guests say they like Airbnb because they can explore a specific neighborhood. And what that actually means is our guests like to stay outside of traditional hotel areas. Again, when we ask our guests, 89% of them say they want to stay in non-traditional hotel areas. And what we typically see with that is that it really helps diversify tourism. It really helps bring tourism to different parts of town. It also helps bring new tourists because what we've seen also from our surveys, in many cases up to a third of travelers say that they would not have traveled or not have stayed as long had Airbnb not existed at the time. So this is what it actually means in terms of spreading tourism. This is a map of Paris. The green dots are hotels. The red dots are Airbnbs. And as you know, hotels are typically concentrated in areas around touristic sites, also around business areas as well. But Airbnb tends to cover all different neighborhoods. And that's partly because hosts in different areas are looking to benefit from tourism, and also because guests are looking for a different experience, looking to explore different parts of the city. And so Airbnb plays a very big role in helping spread travel and revenue across different parts of the city. And once a host in a specific neighborhood starts to generate income, that income gets reinvested, and that helps the local economy in that neighborhood. What else do we know about them? And I was really glad to hear this topic be spoken about a lot at ATM. Our guests really like the Echo option. More than 66% of our guests say they like Airbnb because it's actually better for the environment. What Airbnb also enables is to utilize a resource that is often underutilized as well. This is just some examples. The numbers are staggering sometimes. The number of empty homes in some key markets. China has 70 million empty homes. The US has about 13 million. Japan 8 million, etc., etc., etc. And so people see Airbnb also as a way of monetizing that underutilized resource And that also is much more sustainable than kind of building new types of accommodation. So we put all of that together. We've had 300 million people who've used Airbnb in 191 countries, in 81,000 cities, 400 guests basically check in every 2 minutes. So this platform has performed well at a global level. But what does it mean for this region? Before we go into this region, let's talk about what else is Airbnb doing today. So this was the home section. It has grown significantly, 4.5 million homes, 300 million guests. But we've recently announced that we are not just an accommodation platform, we are moving into a travel platform. And so we are launching what we call a trips platform. So it's not about where you stay, but also how do you get there? What do you actually do at the destination? Who do you stay with? And the first launch was what we call experiences. We launched experiences more than a year ago. Experiences are really activities that you do at the destination. And these are very unique activities. They are supposed to give you unique access. They are supposed to give you a very unique perspective to that city. We launched them initially in 12 cities, scaled that to 50, and the plan is to take that to over 1,000 by the end of this year. We've seen very strong growth, 2,500% in bookings from a low base, as you can imagine. This was the start. But we are seeing some hosts make more than $200,000 from experiences bookings. So some experience hosts making more than $200,000. Now to the region. Where is Airbnb in the region today? Well, first, why is this region interesting to us? We believe now is actually a great time to engage in this region. It's a great time to engage here. And part of the reason is when we look more broadly at the travel market, and this is tourist arrivals by region, we see that emerging markets are growing faster than mature markets, twice the rate. They will account for more than 50% by 2030. And if you look at the Middle East specifically, you see that it's one of the fastest growing regions as well. What's interesting about the Middle East as well is not only the arrivals, but also the outbound travel. It is actually the biggest emerging market combined, the Middle East, North Africa region, the biggest emerging market when it comes to outbound travelers. Also, the timing is really interesting with Expo 2020 in Dubai and all of the plans around that. Obviously, this is a great time to engage. Also, with many economies in the region, especially Saudi Arabia, looking to diversify away from oil and looking for travel and hospitality as key sectors as part of Vision 2030. Again, this is a really key time for us to be in this region. So where are we today in terms of the numbers? We have, in the Middle East and Africa, we have more than 130,000 listings today. We've had 1.7 million people last year alone visit the region and stayed as guests on Airbnb. We have 1.2 million people who've used Airbnb to travel from the region, so outbound guests. So we've seen very strong organic growth. Actually, it's more than 80%, and that's part of the reason why we're really excited about this region. But the potential is definitely still there. There is a big opportunity that is maybe not captured yet in those numbers. What about specifically, let's look at the UAE, where we are today, and one of the key markets in the region. So where are we in the UAE? 6,700 listings as of the end of 2017. 90,000 guests have used Airbnb last year to come to the UAE, and over 180,000 have used Airbnb to travel outbound, to travel out of the region or within the region. And so we are seeing very strong organic growth. So a lot of that has happened organically. We don't have an office yet in the region, in the UAE, for example. So a lot of this growth has happened organically. And we want to kind of continue now to support that growth and to support our community here. And if we look at what our community earned last year, $25 million is the income that was earned by local hosts in the UAE. It's an important number, especially when you think about the multiplier effect in terms of economic activity associated with guests and also with hosts reinvesting some of that money in the economy. But it still says that there is a big opportunity. That's why we really want to engage in this region. We want to work with the key stakeholders in the region. We started with the DTCM about 18 months ago. we signed an MOU. We are really actively engaging with them to assess what opportunities we can work on together. We will continue to work with other stakeholders. Ras Al Khaimah is another example about 2 months ago where we signed an MOU with them. And this is the type of partnerships that we want to continue to foster in this region to really help our community grow and prosper. But we also want to expand the business, and we actually launched experiences in Dubai very recently, and there are a number of experiences on the platform today, and I encourage you to go and check them out. Some of them are really, really interesting. To give you an example, the Dubai Street Food Express. It really kind of shows what Dubai really stands for. So if you think about the melting pot that is Dubai, this takes you on a kind of food experience that shows you the different traditions, cultures, how people live and experience their food, and you get to taste also that different types of food that exist in Dubai. And so it's a really, really interesting experience. And it has this store that we launched recently has actually performed better than we have expected so far, and we are now looking to really expand it and bring more hosts to the platform. We also launched it after that in Amman. Similar type of experiences, food and drink, classes and workshops, nature, sports, etc. And we are now looking to expand to other markets as well, so you'll hopefully learn about new markets in the Middle East where we also launch experiences. Now, looking forward, how can Airbnb really support tourism and events across the region? So thinking Expo 2020 and beyond that. One of the key value propositions of Airbnb is really helping the destinations to host events, to host a large number of tourists in a very sustainable way without major investment by bringing a lot of the accommodation supply that already exists onto the platform. And that includes potentially vacant supply that is not currently being utilized. We have launched many programs with developers, for example, to help bring this type of supply and address the need for additional accommodation around events or in general for tourism. The other key point is really diversifying the tourism offering and bringing more an incremental guest. If you think about Dubai, there are amazing high-end luxury hotels, but we could potentially complement that by adding the type of accommodation that Airbnb provides and attract the millennials that may not be visiting Dubai as much as they should. And that is a way of really diversifying the offering that is available in a market. And then what these people require is very authentic and local experiences. And again, that's what the platform provides through both the homes, the accommodation side, and the experiences side. And the last key point is about financial empowerment for local hosts. So the money that is being made on the Airbnb platform, we say that around 97% of the value actually goes back to the host, and that creates financial empowerment. They get to participate in for example, if we take Expo 2020 as an example, they get to participate in the financial benefit of that event, which then has ripple effect on the local economy as well. I want to give you a quick example around this point, in terms of hosting a large number of people, specifically around events. This is from the Rio Olympics, where Airbnb was an official partner for Rio Olympics 2016. Over 85,000 guests actually stayed on Airbnb. So more Brazilians stayed on Airbnb than in hotels. The capacity of homes, as you can see on the right-hand side, actually flexes very naturally. So you can see that 6 months before the events, we only had 24,000 listings in Rio de Janeiro. On the day of the Olympics, we had 48,000 homes because hosts realized that there are big benefits associated with being host during that period of time. So the total number reached 48,000 homes. If the city wanted to build hotels to basically accommodate those 85,000 guests, they would have needed 257 additional hotels. So, and the host in this case earned around $30 million. So what this really means, it created an additional revenue stream for the host, which again helps the local economy, but it also saved significantly on the capital investments that the city needed to do, and it had massive environmental benefits because we were not, or the city was not building new accommodation to host the guests coming to Rio during that period of time. So this is where we are in the region, how we are thinking about this region and why it's exciting today. And if we go back to the global level, we've had 300 million guest arrivals. We had 1.2 million here in this region, but we believe that the opportunity is much bigger. We still believe that Airbnb is perceived as an alternative. Airbnb is not yet for everyone, as we say. And our mission is to create a world where everyone can belong anywhere. And we feel that we've done really well with the anywhere part, but we are not there yet with the everyone part. And that's why we announced about 2 weeks ago Airbnb For Everyone. And Airbnb For Everyone has 5 key components: Superhost, Super Guest, Categories and Collections, Airbnb Plus, and beyond. I'll go very quickly through each of them and talk about how they will help make Airbnb for everyone, and then we'll open it up for a few questions. So, Superhost. Superhosts are really, really critical for Airbnb. Everything starts for us by investing in our host. And Superhosts are the tier of hosts that provide the best service on the platform. They're very highly rated, they have very high response rates, they don't cancel on guests. And so what we are doing here is creating additional benefits for them. Today they have benefits such as, they get a special badge, they get visibility, but we want to create more services for them, like access to in-home services. We want to give them access to our marketing partners, things that really help them drive their business. Super Guest. So that's the other side of our platform, with the other really important stakeholders for us. And we want to create a Super Guest program for them. So we asked them, what do you actually want from a loyalty program? We expected them to say, we want points, like all traditional hospitality. Actually, the answers that we got were really interesting. They wanted very specific services. They wanted a fridge that was full when they got to their home. They wanted transportation already arranged from the airport directly to their listing. They wanted a gym available for them. So it was really important services for them to make their travel experience better. And so that's what we are launching. We call it a passport to a new travel lifestyle. So these are plans to really kind of provide additional benefits to our key stakeholders, our super hosts and super guests. But then we realized that Airbnb was designed when we were much smaller. Basically, when we had 16 listings, the search experience itself has not really changed that much. But we now have 4.5 million listings, and we think that we have something for everyone, but it's very, very hard to find. We still use exactly the same categories as we used 10 years ago. And these are 3 types of rooms: shared rooms, private rooms, and entire homes, which makes it very difficult for a guest to find exactly what they wanted. And that's why we are introducing 4 additional categories: vacation rentals, bed and breakfast, boutique hotels, and unique listings. I will go very quickly through each of them to give you an idea of what these would be. So, shared room. Shared room is actually how Airbnb started. It's typically a sofa bed in a living room, like you see in this one. It's the most affordable way to travel on Airbnb. It's a very social way to travel. The cost typically on average is around $38 per night. This is an example from Shanghai in China, hosted by Lily. She charges around $18 per night. And she's had over 200 guests over the last year or so. Private rooms. Private rooms are basically a room that has its privacy within a bigger apartment. And this is really the legacy of Airbnb. This is what Airbnb stands for. We have over 1 million private rooms on the platform today. This is an example from Havana, Cuba. So hosted by Julia and Silvio within their home, and they charge from $60 a night. Cuba is a very interesting case for us as we think about new markets. We launched in Cuba in April 2015, and since then we have over 1 million guests who've used Airbnb and more than 32,000 homes in the country. This is an entire home. This is where the majority of our business is today. So that's an example from Madrid in Spain, hosted by Magdalena. She charges around $100 a night. And this is kind of what Airbnb has moved to in a way. This is typically someone who lives in the apartment, but they rent it out when they are traveling or they have other commitments. And now we're adding this new category of vacation homes. Vacation home is typically a place where the host does not live most of the time. In many cases, it's run by property managers, it's run by professionals. And this is a category that we're really focusing on. We are trying to bring more of the professional property managers on board, especially in these vacation destinations. This is an example from Austria. It's hosted by Remy. It's a 15th century chalet, and he charges from $165 a night. The next category is bed and breakfast. Bed and breakfast have existed for centuries, way before Airbnb ever started. This is an example of a 16th century manor house in Cambridge, in England. And they charge $100 per night. We already have a large number of B&Bs, over 120,000 B&Bs on the platform today. And this is a category that we're also focusing on because it provides that same level of experience that you can typically get from home sharing or entire apartments. The next category is boutique hotels. And these are really very unique hotels that have a very special theme, very unique character. In this case, the Drift in San Jose del Cabo is really targeted at the adventure traveler, at someone who wants to have more social travel. They charge from $140 per night. And today, we have 25,000 boutique hotels, a number that will definitely grow going forward. And the last one is unique. I talked about them very quickly at the beginning. This is an example of a tree house. We have Airstreams, igloos, etc., all sorts of unique places. And so we're giving them a special category called uniques. So the purpose of categories is really connecting every guest with the perfect home. But that's not really enough, because as a guest, I have very different needs when I go on business travel versus when I travel with my family. So we asked actually our guests, why do you use Airbnb? What occasions do you use Airbnb for? And we got a wide range of answers, from family to group getaway, work, social stays, wedding, one of a kind. And we decided to create collections around these specific themes. And these are the collections that we will be creating: family, group getaway, work, etc. And the point is they have to be very highly rated, and they have to provide very specific amenities, very specific services that are tailored to that type of trip. Here's an example: family, one of our biggest use cases. So what is the family collection? It will have at least 4.8 overall rating. It will have 5-star reviews specifically from families, so you know that other families have reviewed them and have actually liked those listings. They will be entire homes. They will have full kitchens, because that's typically a requirement from families. They will have Wi-Fi, TV, etc. And so the point is to create a collection that meets the needs of a family traveler. And we have already 145,000 homes in that collection, and that's a number that will scale as we build on these collections going forward. So collections, great homes for every kind of trip. So now we've addressed kind of the guest side and the trip side as well. But a lot has changed in the last 10 years, especially with guest expectations. They all expect a higher level of comfort or quality. Some of them expect a very high level of comfort and quality. And many of our hosts are actually already doing that. They are going above and beyond kind of the typical or most basic experience and providing additional services. That's why we're introducing Airbnb Plus. So that's a new tier of Airbnb homes. They will have 3 key characteristics: beautiful homes based on, there will be unique character, unique design features. There will be exceptional hosts, again, very highly rated, very high ratings, very high response and acceptance rates, and they will be verified for quality. And this is very, very new for Airbnb, verified for quality. Airbnb will actually have a 100-point checklist, and someone will go to the property and check the properties before they are allowed to join this plus category. And so this has clear benefits for our guests, because now there is a higher level of comfort. Some people are looking for that high level of quality, and they can find it with plus. What's in it for our hosts? So we will give them top placement. We will give them special placement. We will give them specific in-home services, like a design consultation if they need it, professional photography, and premium support so they can actually get fast response times if they face any issues. So this is Airbnb Plus, which actually launched a couple of weeks ago, and now will be scaling to a much larger number of markets. And then we said, what if we went even beyond that? In 2017, we acquired a company called Luxury Retreats. Luxury Retreats has a set of amazing homes. You can see some of them later, and they provide very high-end hospitality with great concierge services. And so we thought, what if we brought that experience with high-end hospitality to one of the best kind of platforms for travel? And it would obviously start with homes. So these are some of the examples of the homes that are on the platform. Really amazing homes, as you can see. But then that wouldn't be it. We would add to it high-end hospitality, so world-class hospitality and unique experiences. You would have a concierge dedicated to creating a custom experience for you. And so this is an example of a villa in Tuscany, and then they will create potentially cooking classes and unique experiences around that for the host. And the idea is to create the trip of a lifetime that's custom designed for that specific host. So this is what we covered today in terms of the next step for Airbnb: Superhost, Superguest, categories and collections, Plus, and beyond. And our hope is really to bring that vision not just globally, but also to the Middle East and North Africa, especially now that we are really engaged in this region and we are committed to this region. Thank you very much, and I'm going to leave a few minutes for any questions that you have.
Hello.
Yeah, is Airbnb offering any special rate to travel agents or tour operators?
Sorry?
Is Airbnb offering any special rate to travel agents or tour operators?
So we don't, and part of the reason is because Airbnb doesn't set any rates. So we are a platform where the host actually decides what rate they set for their specific listing. We are starting to create tools for travel operators and agents, tools that we are initially building for our business travelers, where they have a travel agent booking in-house that we can use for travel agents, but we cannot set specific prices for tour operators.
Hi. So do you see Airbnb will reduce the hotel bookings? Because maybe one example, a family who's traveling with a kid, they might book a hotel room and take an additional bed, or they might choose a triple occupancy room instead of a double if they have a kid. But then if Airbnb is giving an alternative accommodation, the hotel bookings will reduce. I mean, this is what you also feel, or any other opinion?
So just to make sure I understand, you are asking whether Airbnb will include hotel bookings on the platform?
So more of, suppose a hotel is getting booked at say 100 room nights in a month. So if Airbnb listings are there in that particular city, will it reduce to maybe 80 bookings or 50 bookings so that people will book Airbnb instead of a hotel?
I'm finding it hard to understand, sorry.
What she is trying to ask is whether Airbnb in the long run can be a danger to the hotel bookings.
Okay, good question, thank you. I think what we are focusing on is really a very specific type of experience. So even the boutique hotels that you see will be on Airbnb, they will have very specific criteria. And the whole goal is to really create that very unique local experience. And as long as hotels fit within that criteria, they can join this program. But in general, I mean, that's kind of the key area where we are focusing on hotels, but it's much more about the experience than opening it up to kind of bigger and more traditional hotels. And sorry, just to add to that, and in terms of like, if we think more broadly outside of the Airbnb platform, I think what we see today and like some of the numbers is the people who are using Airbnb, they are looking for a different type of experience. So in a way, it's incremental, it's more complementary. In many cases, we ask them up to a third, as I mentioned, would say they would have not traveled or not traveled as long had it not been for Airbnb. So we can see them as very complementary in many cases. Dubai is also a great example of that. You have very high-end hotels. You can complement that with a different type of offering through Airbnb. Thank you.
I think I understand that you have set us an objective basically to attract 300 million visitors, right, in the coming years. So that, of course, requires a huge number of rooms. So what is your plan to increase the number of rooms just to meet our target, 300 million visitors? That's my first question. My second question is, I think you don't have an office yet in Dubai, so what is your plan for the region?
Thank you. So on the first question, if you see the new categorization, we will be looking to build our supply in each of these categories. So for example, vacation homes is a relatively new area for us. We're very focused on building our supply in vacation destinations. Historically, we started more of an urban destination. We have moved very aggressively into the vacation side, and that includes working with more professional property managers and bringing the software tools and the tools that they need to be able to list on Airbnb. We will be doing the same with bed and breakfast, with boutique hotels. So trying to kind of also supplement the supply that we already have. Having said that, we will continue to focus. We have 4.5 million homes on the platform. There are 3 billion homes in the world. So there is still a massive opportunity when it comes to kind of the owner-occupied properties as well. On the second question, I think, as I mentioned, this is really the start for us to engage. We don't have a date for an office in Dubai, but hopefully that will happen soon.
Hello, good afternoon. I wanted to ask if there is any legal advising in terms of listing your property on Airbnb in a particular destination. Like, is it legal? Do you need a licensing? Do you need to pay any tax for that? And so on. And my second question would be, for the hotels, there are lots of health and safety regulations that a hotel has to go through in order to put that room up to be rented. Is there any similar rules for the Airbnb private-owned homes?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So on the first question, in terms of the regulation, we work very closely with kind of the regulatory authorities. We have 400 agreements globally with regulatory authorities to clarify what the rules are. Specifically in this region, we have an MOU with the DCM. They have very clear regulations in place. We did the same with Ras Al Khaimah. In the case of, if we take Dubai, DTCM, we've worked with them on putting what we call a responsible hosting page, which shows all of the requirements of being a host in Airbnb, including taxes and other things as well. And we typically ask the host to make sure that they meet the local requirements before they host on Airbnb. When it comes to trust and safety, it's a good question, but what we always say as well is there are always measures as well for people when they live in their own homes. I mean, this is a home that's occupied by someone, and there are very specific requirements in most places, if not all places, around what you need to have in your own home. And so these already exist for many of the homes that are on Airbnb. In the case of Plus, we're even taking it to another level. We have very specific criteria and a list of things that need to be in the property that we will actually check in person to make sure that they are there.
Hello. Yeah, I'm a travel agent. So I want to ask you about the doubt that a guest will have about the security, especially when they stay outskirts, out of the city. What the hotel gives the comfort doesn't be there in the private homes, especially when the guest stay.
Yeah.
So,
and that, yeah.
So just want to about the challenge that the guests may have as a doubt in their mind.
Yeah, and that's where we really rely on the platform itself and the review system. So people who have stayed with that host before will get the chance to review that property, which then the guest that is going to stay there can actually see those reviews and decide if it's the right place for them. And so we rely on that system. And in the very, very extreme rare cases that anything happens, we have all of the measures in place, from a trust and safety team to all of the insurance protections in place to cover for that. But typically, we rely on the platform itself to kind of police any issues that may arise. And we work very closely with law enforcement agencies, obviously, as do hotels.
Good evening. You recently signed a deal with SignMinder, and I would like to know how do you see that would contribute to the expansion in the region?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and this is a very important partnership for us, and I think it's the start of a number of similar partnerships. In terms of where we see the big opportunity, it's, they obviously have very interesting inventory, many of it that fits into these categories, like the boutique hotels, in some cases serviced apartments, that could actually fit really well with kind of the new categories on Airbnb. And that's kind of what we leverage that partnership with them to bring that inventory in the region as well as in other regions too.
Excuse me. Hi.
Sorry, follow-up question and we'll go right there.
Okay. So you were saying, more deals, similar deals coming up?
Yes.
More channel managers?
Stay tuned.
That's a scoop. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, so for a concept like Airbnb, safety and verification plays a very important role. And maybe you answered it partly in the previous couple of questions, but very specifically, now let's consider something like Rio, right? You'll move from 24,000 properties to 48,000 in 6 months. Mm-hmm. That's like 130 odd properties being onboarded on a daily basis. So how would you work from a safety and verification perspective, given the fact that Airbnb no longer works on a completely verified, or rather someone visiting the host's home before actually getting it onboarded?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And we, as I mentioned, we rely on a team of trust and safety people who have really learned about the platform and what could potentially constitute fraud, say, on the platform. And they police for that. It's underpinned by very strong artificial intelligence and a number of other tools that they use to double check. And it's also about understanding the identity and, as we said, linking the offline identity to the online identity of a person. For Rio specifically, because of that huge influx of both guests and hosts, we actually had a team on the ground as well to support people, to help both hosts who are new to hosting and also guests who may not have used Airbnb in the past. So there was actually a house for Airbnb there on the ground to help the community.
Hello? Oh, yeah. My understanding is that your distribution model so far has been B2C. You deal directly with the consumers via the apps and the mobile sites. Do you have any plans in terms of distribution, either globally or within the region, to develop more partnerships, to look at working with the trade? Obviously, you're here at a trade event, but you actually compete with most of the companies here.
We do have a number of partnerships in place when it comes to distribution, especially with kind of the meta players, some of the OTAs as well. We will soon have one in the region as well. We couldn't announce it in this event, but it should happen in the next couple of weeks or so. So we are starting to use a lot more of the other distribution channels. One thing to keep in mind, though, is Airbnb is kind of very particular in the way that it operates. So it's difficult to integrate the end-to-end experience. We can integrate the inventory, but the actual booking and confirmation needs to happen on Airbnb because of all of the trust and safety measures that we need to run on the platform. And so that kind of endpoint typically needs to happen on Airbnb. But we have a number of partnerships when it comes to distribution.
Yeah, I think having an Arabic version of the website would help you gain market share. Is that part of the plan?
Office website, yes. The website is part of the plan. Nothing to announce right now, but this one will definitely happen soon. Again, stay tuned on that one.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Hi, how does the company look at other big OTAs like Expedia's Home and Away and Booking.com growing into the same market, vacation rental? They've recently announced 5 million listings. How do you look at that?
Yeah, I mean, I cannot comment on the numbers specifically, but the way that I think the industry is shaping up is you see Airbnb, which has a very traditional homes business, kind of expanding across different regions and different types of homes like we saw with categories. I think it's a great compliment for us that Booking.com is moving into that business. It means that it's a really big industry in a way, and they believe in the value of it. I think in some of the vacation rental destination, that means we overlap, and there is an overlap between Booking.com and Airbnb. But still, I think in terms of the guests, there is quite a difference. I think people associate Booking.com more with hotels, whereas Airbnb is really a homes platform. And even when you get a booking from an Airbnb guest, they expect that homes experience. Whereas if you get it from Booking.com, it might be a slightly different experience. So what the guests are looking for is also quite different from that perspective. But when it comes to the listings, we see some overlap, especially in the vacation destinations. And that's it. Thank you very much.